2,500 years ago, one man controlled a continuous stretch of land spanning from India to Egypt. The Achaemenid Empire under Xerxes I stood as the most formidable political entity on Earth. When Xerxes went to war, he marched with a military force cited at over 2 million men. This army moved with a logistical footprint that functioned like a migrating city. He believed he held authority over the natural world. When a sudden storm destroyed his military bridge, Xerxes ordered his men to punish the ocean. They whipped the sea 300 times and threw heavy iron chains into the water to bind it as his slave. Yet the man who called himself a living god, who chained the ocean and commanded millions, did not die in a blaze of glory on the battlefield. He was murdered in the dark, defenseless in his own bedroom, by his trusted bodyguard. Historical collapse rarely starts at the borders. Long before an invading army breaches the gates, an empire rots from the inside out. Xerxes' obsession with conquering Greece was a matter of family legacy. His father, Darius, had failed to subdue the Greeks at Marathon. That defeat became a generational burden, and Xerxes spent 4 years stockpiling grain and weapons to avenge it. To move his land army into Europe, he lashed hundreds of ships together to bridge the Hellespont Strait. It was a massive engineering feat that allowed his troops to walk across the water for 7 continuous days and nights. But sheer numbers have limits. At a coastal pass called Thermopylae, 300 Spartan warriors used the narrow geography to stall the Persian advance. For 3 days, they killed thousands of Persian troops, including 2 of Xerxes' own brothers. Eventually, the Persian advance overwhelmed the defenders. Xerxes entered a largely evacuated Athens and set fire to the sacred Parthenon. From his throne, he watched the symbol of Greek civilization burn to ash. Standing in the ruins of the Greek capital, Xerxes had reached his furthest point of expansion. While it felt like a victory, this moment marked the end of his momentum. The Greek navy lured Xerxes' fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. The heavy Persian forces were trapped and dismantled. With his naval power shattered, Xerxes fled back to Asia Minor. The sea he had whipped just months earlier had broken his invasion. Xerxes returned to Persia and withdrew into the palace of Persepolis. The man who had sought to conquer the known world shrank his existence to the walls of a single compound. Cut off from the outside world, his paranoia grew. He became infatuated with his daughter-in-law, Artante, pulling her into a reckless affair that threatened the stability of the royal household. The crisis peaked when Artante demanded a sacred royal robe as a gift. The problem was, the robe had been woven by Xerxes' primary wife, Amestris. Despite knowing the social and political danger, Xerxes gave in to the demand. Amestris targeted the girl's mother, the wife of Xerxes' brother, Macestes. She subjected the woman to public mutilation, an act that forced Xerxes to murder his own brother to suppress the resulting unrest. By 465 BCE, the palace was a center of conspiracy. Artabanus, commander of the king's bodyguards, saw his opportunity. In the middle of the night, he bypassed royal security and assassinated Xerxes in his bed. A monarch who possessed the wealth of continents was brought down by his inability to govern his own household. Artabanus immediately weaponized the chaos. He convinced Xerxes' younger son, Artaxerxes, that the eldest son, Darius, was the killer. In a preemptive move, the younger brother killed the older, removing a primary rival to the throne. Before Artabanus could take the crown for himself, a loyal general revealed the conspiracy. Artaxerxes lured the assassin into a trap, executed him, and claimed the Persian throne over the remains of his own family. The immediate succession crisis ended, but the central control that held the empire together began to erode. The focus of the crown shifted from geographic expansion to internal survival. 130 years later, the Achaemenid dynasty faced a different kind of threat. Alexander the Great arrived at the gates of Persepolis to find a state struggling with the same internal fractures that began under Xerxes. Alexander's forces tore through the compound. The wealth of generations was so immense that it took thousands of camels to haul the looted gold and silver away. During a victory celebration, a Greek woman suggested a final act of vengeance.
Alexander grabbed a torch and set fire to Persepolis, explicitly as payback for Xerxes burning Athens a century earlier. The wooden roofs collapsed, and the intricate stone carvings burned. The architectural center of the Persian Empire was reduced to a few charred pillars standing in the dust. Military mass and hoarded wealth cannot insulate a ruler from the long-term consequences of their own decisions. Power is a fragile illusion, and unchecked arrogance will eventually ignite the fire that consumes the state.